And I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Manchester Select Board for Monday, August 1st, 6:30 p.m. We are being recorded by 1623 Studios, and it's on Zoom. So first up, I would like to invite public comments not on the agenda, and I would like to say that this is not something that's required. We choose to do this because we want to hear comments. And I did have a chat with a number of people, one of whom did
I have a
feel.
in the audience saying there may not be any audio.
Okay.
Oh, really?
I don't know if it's you.
Now? How's now? Ken, do they hear it now, or
No, it's a speaker.
Okay.
is it better?
No, not yet. We're saying no.
All right, let's do this. Sarah, Mellish, are you able to hear me? Anybody out there? Okay, got a thumbs up from Jeff. Woo woo. Okay. Anyway, back to, we did open the meeting. We're going to have a roll call vote of those in attendance. John Round,
Yes.
Brian Solacey,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
Ann Harrison.
Yes.
and
Recording in progress.
All
All
right.
right.
So you need to give yourself, if you can.
Okay.
You do it.
Jeff, can you hear me still?
Mute everybody, just yourself.
I just muted myself.
Should be good.
You sound like you're in a barrel.
Better in one than over, I suppose. Well,
But you're audible, and there's no echo.
good.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, so we're all here. We determined that. That's a good start. And I was going to invite, or I will be inviting, public comments on non-agenda items. And just to reiterate, that public comment is something we as a board willfully and happily ask for. It is a courtesy that we extend, but it's always good to hear from people. So, are there any public comments on non-agenda items? Okay, state your name and your address, please,
Stan?
if you like.
Okay. Lorraine Iovani, 28 Pine Street.
Are you able to hear her?
No, really.
So can you speak up a little bit more, please?
Okay, I will do my best. Lorraine Iovani, 28 Pine Street.
Thank you.
All right, not related to anything on the agenda item. I just want to fully inform the board of a particular piece of information that may be of use to you at some point, whenever. Doesn't have to be tonight, it can be sometime down the road. And here is the information. In 2015, the city of Beverly decided that they were going to withdraw from 911 dispatch.
Okay, that is, 911 dispatch is on the agenda. We cannot be taking that.
And
Okay, so if you'd like to move on to another topic, please do
I
so.
would. Okay, so the next sentence I have basically is.
Does it have to do with anything on the agenda, Lorraine?
No, it does
Okay.
not. What happened was, I'm just giving you a little history of the city of Beverly, Mass, which again might be useful to you and the full board. And basically, they were fined $1 million for withdrawing from 911 North Shore.
Lorraine, I cannot allow
And
that. This
it
is
was-
on the agenda, so please do not say,
Actually, that topic is actually not on the agenda.
North Shore 911 is on the
Beverly,
agenda.
Mass is not on the agenda. So,
Lorraine,
as
I'm
a
sorry.
courtesy, As a courtesy, you listened to various people
Lorraine,
today.
please do not continue on this
I
topic.
want to finish my sentence, if I may.
No,
and I will be
Lorraine,
done.
no.
They finally settled $1 million.
Okay, Greg, what, did you,
$220,000.
Lorraine, you must stop. That has no bearing on
And
this.
actually, I did.
Lorraine
finish my
Iavani,
sentence.
we will disallow you from meetings if you're not going to follow the proper protocol. I'm sorry, but you can't, it does not give people an opportunity to be discussing. That's why we can't allow people to talk about items that are on the agenda. That's not okay for you to be able to come in and not anybody else.
That's
Do you understand
that's duly noted, Madam Chair. Now, I am finished, and thank you. I appreciate your letting me finish. Thank
Are there
you.
any other comments on items not on the agenda? Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to committee interviews. We have Jeffrey Bodmer Turner, who has,
Skip number 1, back up to number 1.
I sure did. Oh, look at me skipping something really important and super fun as well. So, we have a young man here who's actually done quite a lot for our town in his not long number of years. But most recently, he went above and beyond. And so we have a certificate of recognition for Max Warner for outstanding performance in saving human life and the display of conspicuous initiative, capability, and attention to duty, thereby earning the respect and admiration of his peers and the voting public, and a lot more. Max did, on the 13th of July, 2022, observe a boater in distress after having fallen in the water. The boater, not you. Max did recover the individual from the harbor, thus avoiding potential tragedy for the individual and his family. So while I make a little light of it, Max, it's truly a remarkable feat. Thank you. And I would like to present this certificate of recognition to you. Come on up in the camera. Here we go. Max, thank you so much. It's nice and official.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you, Max. Bion, would you like to make any comments?
So I happened to be there with Greg. We were following one of the public safety folks that's been working on it. And my old ears didn't hear a thing.
Nor mine.
And so I was chatting with Greg, and I saw Max just do this. You know, look over there and leap out of the boat. He was in the boat. And he said, "Someone's hollering for you, Brian." And they're in the water and they can't get out. And so youth sprinted down the dock and beat everybody else there. And, the gentleman out had fallen in and had his leg wrapped up in dinghy pennant. Couldn't get out. It's stuck between two dinghies, just waiting for help. And that's what Max stepped in. So I'm very grateful for Max being there and responding in such a timely manner. Thanks again.
Absolutely. Aaron, would you like to say something?
Not to, I have on occasion fallen off of floats. And my question for Bion is, are there ladders on the floats so that someone who was not lucky enough to have a rescuer right there could sooner or later disentangle himself
There
or
is,
herself?
and there is actually when I can see it from
Okay.
there.
So each of the floats has some way that a person can get out who is not strong enough to lift himself out with his arms.
Including Tux Point as of today.
Thank you.
And would somebody like to get a picture of, I don't know if this is of any importance or if anybody wants to, but of Bion, Max, his dad and me together?
Yes.
All
Oh,
of,
the three, oh, you
Yeah,
only
yeah.
need 3 years.
it's up to you.
Well done.
I don't need to be in any
We're getting
pictures, but if you want. And this is Max's dad, Ken Warnock, who's also been very involved in town with many. Whoops, do you want to get in there? I'll get
No,
there
no,
for
no,
the
you
three of
get
you.
it. No, you're the important one. He's got enough.
Max, you should be in the.
And this is in large part, I have to say thank you due to all of the training and education connections in town. So it's been wonderful to have them on our department.
Maybe he'll stick around.
Next generation.
I can only hope.
Thank you, Max. Okay, good to know about the ladders. All right, so next on the agenda is the drought condition update. Greg, did you want to do this one? Or I do?
I can start, happy to. No surprise, it continues to be very dry. We are, well, a couple weeks ago, we were 8 inches behind the normal. We're probably closer to 10 at this point, 9.5, 10. So obviously, things are very dry. The state has put us into the 3rd level out of 4 critical drought conditions. And so they highly, highly recommend that communities institute outdoor watering bans as we enter this more dry period. Fortunately, our own supplies are doing okay, but it's anticipating down the road. If this continues for all of August and into September, then we get very worried about our supplies lasting through the winter. Because obviously if it's cold and frozen, we're not gaining more water, at least from surface water. So as a precaution, Chuck, Dan, and I would strongly recommend that you as a board with your water commissioner hat on declare a water emergency and institute a ban for general outdoor water use, limiting it to hand watering only between the hours of 5 p.m. and 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. 7 or 8 a.m. Best to get it done before it starts to heat up again. So that's where we are, and that's our recommendation.
Okay, Chuck, did you want to chime in?
Sure. I don't really have much to add to what Greg said. It has been very dry, as everybody knows, and most lawns are already brown, so there's probably no saving them at this point if they're not already brown. So, I guess the other thing just to keep in mind is the state has their own drought plan, and that's what's dictating that we're in a stage 3 critical drought. And so those are where those things that take into account more than just what is going on with our water supply. Those are more on a regional basis. And so, but again, as in staying with the messaging, it kind of makes sense. Nobody can predict the future, so that's kind of where this recommendation is coming from. Obviously, we'll continue to monitor everything that's going on, but as Greg said, we are in okay shape with our own water supply, but just being good stewards of the environment is kind of where this is coming from, I think.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. Comments from the board, John?
I'm certainly in favor of this. I think that when water bans are introduced and people don't necessarily see that there's a problem, and sometimes that happens, this is not one of those times. I think that everyone in town knows that it's pretty dry. And so I expect that they'll pretty good conformance, obeying the any drought provision that we vote on.
Ryan?
I'm in favor, in as much as it's my first drought ban. Will we be continue to get updates as we go through?
Yeah.
months?
They're checking the water all the time.
I'm fine. Thank you.
I just would like a clarification on what's being requested. When you say only allowing hand watering, does that mean just watering cans, or you can use a hose by hand? Or could you be clear as to what you mean?
So we don't limit it to just buckets of water. You can use a hose
Can
to,
use a hose, okay.
as long as you're
hand-
holding it,
Holding it, okay,
but you're not supposed to put it on a sprinkler
okay.
or an irrigation system. So it's
No
really just,
irrigation, no sprinkler, okay, thank you. And then my other question is, what's the accountability if we have someone who has an extremely green lawn?
right, so there's an ability to fine people
Okay,
who are violating the declaration. I think I want to say it's $100 for the first offense, and then it goes up to $300. I'll have to double check that.
so it would, someone having to be caught in the act, or is that, who's accountable for determining? I mean, you could presume someone with a green lawn has been irrigating, but maybe that's not true, so
It's possible they have a private well.
Right.
So that's something that the DPW would verify. So if either DPW notices it and knocks on the door, or someone can observe and let the DPW know, they will follow up.
Okay, so basically it's, if somebody suspects or wanted to hold someone accountable, it would be reported to the DPW.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And they have meters. Some residents have irrigation meters.
Right.
Right.
So they're,
So that should be 0 after this? That's a really good point. Is that something that, if we're allowing hand watering only, there should be no use of that irrigation meter?
They would use
Well,
the
unless they
irrigation
have
meter to.
There could be some water coming up.
Okay,
Well, so yeah, most people's irrigation meters also, serve their outdoor, spigots, so whether it's a hose or some other thing. It's not necessarily an irrigation system, even though we call it an irrigation meter. We're not that sophisticated, unfortunately, and not only that, but we don't read meters on a daily basis, it's more of a quarterly. So we wouldn't know necessarily if they were using that meter after the ban was in effect.
is there the ability to periodically monitor those during the ban, Chuck?
Technically, yes, but it's not something that we've ever really contemplated. We read meters 4 times a year when it's time. We don't typically, go beyond that. And, just because we read your meter 4 times a year, we're reading, our guys are out, on a weekly or couple weeks basis for each quarter. So it's not like, it just happens on one day. So it's not quite that advanced.
But to Kathy's point then, if we are going to be putting into effect a water ban, then how are not you personally, but how is that to be followed up if need be?
Yeah, so like Greg said, if somebody reports it, we'll follow up, or if we see it, we'll try and educate people. We're not exactly the water police looking to, throw people in jail or anything like that, but, it's just mostly to make people aware that it's happening. Obviously, we'll put out the signboards and, I'm sure Tiffany will have some, public, messaging that goes out. But it's not something that, we're gonna be looking at around the clock necessarily, but, we will be monitoring.
Okay, thank you, Chuck.
So this is a good use of the reverse 911 probably, to get a notice out to everybody.
Yes.
I think this would be appropriate to do.
Yeah.
Other heavy outdoor water uses, filling swimming pools, hot tubs.
Right. So those kind of uses are banned as an outdoor use.
So maybe we need to make the motion a little broader than only hand watering.
Mm-hmm.
So the typical verbiage is non-essential outdoor use is banned. So non-essential would be your pools and hot tubs and car washing, and so on.
Can I make a suggestion? As far as printed or written communication to the public, what might be helpful is like a what's in and what's out slide, right? Yes or no. So irrigation, you can do this, but not this. Car washing,
I don't see what the problem with car washing is. car wash?
Well, it's non-essential outdoor
Maybe,
use.
yeah, but it's one bucket and less water than I'd use in a shower.
Right, yeah, so,
Well, we
Depending
gotta
on-
work on your
Depending how
shower.
you wash your car.
Yeah,
A
exactly.
lot of people keep the hose running while they're washing their car.
so that could be an example, though, if we wanted to allow
Right.
some car washing, there is the, no, you can't, as an
a
example, you
bucket
could
of
say,
water.
no, not as a hose, but yes, you can use a no rinse formula, which is just a bucket with some stuff in it,
I
and,
think that makes sense.
right,
and-
because people wanna maintain their investments and.
Yeah, Tiffany can probably, just one sec, please, Sarah. Tiffany could probably get something on the website and we could get something into the Cricket. Sarah Melish,
Yeah, in the
are you speaking
in the
as-
context of
Are you
global
speaking
warming.
ZBA, Sarah? Are you speaking as ZBA?
no, I'm speaking as a resident.
Okay, name and address,
Oh,
please.
sorry, Sarah Mellish, 11 Bennett Street. In the context of global warming, we need to retain our shrubs and trees. Are you going to allow drip irrigation to continue with respect to the shrubs and trees?
That, Kathy asked that, and that falls under non-essential outdoor use ban, but I certainly understand what you're saying. Bit of
I
a-
mean, I've lost already trees and shrubs that are outside of my drip irrigation system. The house next to me had almost every single tree cut down, so I no longer have shade on my shade gardens.
Right, well,
You know, we need to keep shrubs and trees. I agree with not having lawns, but
Watch your plastic. Watch your plastic.
Steve,
You know.
Gang, you're not muted.
so I think we need to allow drip irrigation. That's my opinion. Thank you.
I think that's something
Question
that,
for Chuck. I don't know if Chuck wants to weigh in on drip irrigation.
Chuck, do you wanna weigh in on drip irrigation?
Well, so I think the idea is that, it's before, if it's within the time window that Greg mentioned, then, it would be allowed anyway.
5
And
PA.
second of all, you can't really see drip irrigation, so, I appreciate that Sarah is, being a good steward and, has that implemented, so I don't think it would be something that, we would be, looking at, coming down on necessarily. Like I said, there's not a mechanism for it, but, it's just mostly people being, honoring the ban.
Well, and drip irrigation by nature is drips. It's not, you're not turning on a hose
You're
full
not putting
bore.
water into
Right.
the air to evaporate.
Right, exactly. Yeah, if I may, I agree with Sarah that protecting our trees is rather
Mhm.
important. I know on my own property, we have not been watering our trees and they are
Mhm.
suffering and that's not a good thing. So I would support some type of drip irrigation, at least just, for the.
It's a hard call. I
Right,
mean,
yeah.
do you save water and
Right.
not have it later? And so but I think as Ann pointed out, it's not being lost by evaporation.
So a question, a clarification there, that's drip irrigation only between those hours of what, 5 and
5 P and 8 A?
Yeah.
Isn't that it?
only in the evening?
Yeah, 5 P 8 A. So the least, okay, are there any other comments on this? May I have a motion to have a ban in Manchester on non-essential outdoor water uses during, excluding hand watering or drip irrigation between the hours of 5 P and 8 A?
I'm not sure that that's as clear as it could be.
I'm
Are we
happy for a
banning it
friendly-
between,
I'm happy for a friendly amendment. We first did it, so you can
okay,
do your own.
right, that, the town of Manchester bans non-essential outdoor water use, with the exception of hand watering and drip irrigation of plants between 5 p.m. and 8 a.m.
Okay, do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, John Round,
Yes?
Brian Solacey,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
Ann Harrison?
Yep.
Becky Jake says yes. It's unanimous. Thank you. Now we have committee interviews. And up first is Jeffrey Bodmer Turner for Concom. Has everybody had a chance to read his application? All right, Jeff?
Hi,
You there?
if I can make an opening comment, I'm just thrilled that Max Warner is not interested in this particular opening.
Okay, I read your application and it sounds like you certainly will be bringing a lot to this committee if you get appointed. Ann Harrison, do you have any questions?
Yeah, very impressive resume, a little short on botany. Or anything else really having to do with the purview of the Concom. Could you speak to that?
Sure, I didn't load the resume with extraneous things. I've been very active in a number of conservation groups. I'm an active birder and have been in National Audubon, Mass Audubon for 25 years. I have been a member of the trustees of reservations and other groups that conserve land and conserve water supplies. I see the primary task of the Conservation Commission in our town as administering to state regulations related to wetlands and the local bylaws related to the wetlands. I haven't sat in any committee working on those issues specifically, but I'm a pretty quick learner and I'm dedicated to putting in the time to getting up to speed with other members of the committee on the tasks that they are presented with. I've attended a number of Concom meetings in the past few months, and I've had a lifelong interest in conservation.
Thank you very much. That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Kathy Bellata?
No questions, just a comment. I believe I'm a big believer in all committees and boards having diversity of thought. So after reviewing Mr. Bodmer Turner's application, what I believe he brings to the table is that that skill set of reviewing data for accuracy and applicability, as well as Concom is often involved with conversations on other committees and boards. There's a lot of boundary discussion, and he is well positioned to help all of the committees and boards stay aligned with their court charter and roles and responsibilities. So that's really what I liked about his application.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Brian Solacey?
No, it's impressive, and, I give anyone credit want to step up and work on that board or a lot of the boards, so yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you. John Round?
The Concom is one of the 2 or 3 committees that I think needs a strong learner and I won't say necessarily a strong background, but you've got to have dedicated people on that committee that can get up to speed on issues in a hurry. Jeff's reputation precedes him. He's had to get up to speed on a lot of issues fairly quickly over the past several years, and I have no doubt that he will do just that with all of the issues that are in front of the Concom now and will be for the next several years. So I endorse.
Thank
In
you.
that regard, Mr. Brown, I look forward to the narrowing of the bandwidth.
Yes, which is only an advantage, I think, to be able to focus on that.
I'm not sure it's narrowing the bandwidth, but Steve Gang, Chair of Concom, would you like to make any comments?
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me, Madam Chair?
Sure can.
Great. Appreciate the opportunity to endorse Jeffrey Bodmer-Turner. He's spoken to me and I'm aware of his interest and his commitment, which are paramount. As you probably know, there's a bunch of basic and intermediate instruction that every commissioner is offered. And it is usually a bellwether that they're eager to take that. So I take his eagerness to enroll in those courses as a very good sign. And happy to answer any questions if you have them for me.
I'm all set. Is the board ready to vote? May I have a motion? Oh, wait, before we do, how long is the term? It's a 3-year term, is that correct?
Yeah, it's a 3-year term, yes. And it's filling a vacancy that would expire in 2025.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion then?
I move we appoint Jeff Bodmer-Turner to the Conservation Commission for a 3-year term.
I second that.
Wonderful. Okay, roll call vote. Ann Harrison,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
Brian Solacey,
Yes.
John Round,
Yes.
and Becky Jake says yes. Welcome, Mr. Bodmer-Turner, and thank you for putting your hat in the ring. That is a tough, tough commission to work on. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We do not, Mr. Brown is unable to get good cell coverage tonight, so we are going to be relooking at that in a couple of weeks. So that brings to item number 4, which is to reaffirm the vote of to join the North Shore Regional 911 Center and to ratify the IMA. This is not an open hearing, so we're simply going to vote to reaffirm the vote as well as ratify the IMA. Has everybody read everything that we've had? Okay, may I have a motion, please, to reaffirm the vote to join the North Shore Regional 911?
I move that we affirm our decision to join the North Shore 911.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Ann Harrison?
Yes.
Kathy Bellata?
Yes.
Brian Solacey?
No.
John Round?
Yes.
Becky Jake says yes. So it is a 4-to-1 vote to reaffirm the vote. And then now to ratify the regional dispatch IMA. May I have a motion to ratify the regional dispatch IMA, please?
I'll make a motion to ratify. This is the IMA that was signed
Correct,
Thursday, I believe it was.
last Monday,
Oh, last Monday.
Tuesday.
I'll make that motion.
It was on first. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by John Round, seconded by Kathy Bellata. Roll call vote. John Round,
Yes.
Brian Solacey,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata, Ann
Yes.
Harrison, and Becky Jake says yes. To ratify the regional dispatch IMA is unanimous. That brings us to, actually we're ahead of time. So we've got 5 minutes before we can go to the open meeting law complaint. Can we pull out of the consent agenda approval of minutes for July 5th and do that? Okay, does anybody have any questions on the minutes of July 5th? And were any amendments, if any, needed? Okay, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of July 5th,
So moved.
2022, please? Thank you. Second?
Second,
Moved by Ann Harrison, seconded John Round. John, roll call vote. John Round?
yes.
Brian Solacey?
Yes.
Kathy Bellata?
Yes.
Ann Harrison?
Yes.
Becky Jake says yes. Okay, how about the Coast to Cure Bike Ride 2022? Any questions on that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Are they gonna be happy going down School Street on a bunch of bicycles?
didn't they change the route? I thought they modified the route.
Yeah. that's what I
That
thought.
was a different-
I didn't see that.
Yeah, that had a different route on it.
It was Mill Street, what I saw was Mill Street to School Street to 127 and out. And
Yeah, they should go over Pleasant and down Pine or something. That's what-
yeah, getting from Mill to Pine to Pleasant is,
So
That
that's,
stretch isn't as bad as the rest of it.
okay, yeah, it'd just be better not to have them on broken road.
Right. No, that's a good point.
I thought they modified that,
I
because I
didn't
was
see
thinking
schools.
about that as well, and I didn't recall that that was, let's see, where was that?
Hi, this is Kim Trainer calling. I'm from neurofibromatosis for the Coast Ride.
Would you please state your address as well, please?
Sure, 9 Bedford Street, Burlington, Mass.
Thank you very much, Kim. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I'm hearing that there's some concern about riding on Mill Street. Is that what it is?
School.
Oh, School Street, okay.
It's under construction, so that's the concern.
It's a mess.
Okay, and it'll still be going on at the beginning of September?
Yes,
Yeah.
unfortunately, but yes.
Okay, all right, okay, I'll have to bring it back. So we can't be riding on that street is what you're saying?
You can be, but you're not gonna like it.
And it's
'Cause it
not
won't
very,
go.
it's much narrower than it typically is, so it's hard for two cars to go side by side, passing each other, which would make it dangerous for you all.
We give you the alternative
Okay.
to come down.
Yeah, come down Arbella or Lincoln, so you're only on it for 20, 50 yards.
Okay, so you recommend to go down Arbella and Lincoln, okay.
Yeah,
May I suggest that perhaps,
Oh.
as Ann said, you look at
Pleasant
another
Extension.
potential route? And
Wait, if they went from,
No.
Mill Street, they get on School, they'll go over the 128, and they'll have to take a left
Okay,
on Pleasant
wait.
Avenue Extension.
they're coming down, I think they're coming down 127, they're coming down Summer
there we
Street,
go.
and then Forest and Mill.
It
If they just
says-
went down Summer Street and across on Lincoln, and then around Arabella and Pleasant Extension, they wouldn't be in the construction at all.
Well, that's the point I made, I don't know which way they're
Yeah,
going,
they
but
could, and then they go straight across on Pleasant all the way.
Yeah.
why they go all the way around, just straight across on Pleasant.
Yeah. And then down Pine, back to 127.
That'd work too.
So do we actually need to weigh in on what the route is? I mean, they have
No,
proposed
just your
this,
request is to avoid School Street.
Yes.
but- Okay,
And,
that's-
and work with Town Hall or the DPW to
Work with police.
police.
Yeah, work with the police on
Work with
a,
the police.
on a,
Move that we approve.
okay, Kim, did you get that?
So work with the police on the change to the route, is that what you're saying?
Well, just work with them so that you can avoid the uncomfortable routes.
Which is,
Okay.
yeah, School Street specifically.
Okay. Okay, great.
So I
Thank you
move
so much.
we approve, I of course don't have that in front of me.
Coast to the Cure
The Coast-
2022 bike ride.
Coast to the Cure 2022 bike ride, subject to the condition that they work with the police to avoid construction.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Ann Harrison, seconded by Brian Solacey. Roll call vote. John Round,
Yes?
Brian Solacey.
Yes.
Kathy Bellata.
Yes.
Ann Harrison.
Yes.
Becky Jake says yes. Unanimous. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And that brings us to 7:10, open meeting law complaint. Greg, would you like to head this up?
Sure, so we received a formal complaint regarding the open meeting law and potential violations. Bob Coyne submitted that, and if I can summarize, the three primary parts of the complaint were that the select board did not put the question of joining regional dispatch before the town meeting. And secondly, the select board did not obtain town meeting approval to place a non-binding question on the annual election ballot. And then third, the allegation is that the public was deprived of the ability to comment on the June 21st, 22 select board meeting on the dispatch issue. So in your packet, town council has prepared a response for your consideration. You can review that tonight and see if you agree with the response. If you feel there are some changes to it, then you can make those edits. But that would be the response that she could submit on your behalf to the AG's office and to Mr. Coyne.
Did everybody read over all that was submitted? Anybody have any comments on the response from town council? I thought it was good. Covered what needed to be.
So to summarize the response, that it's not a requirement that you put the question to town meeting.
Right.
Select boards have the authority to enter intermunicipal agreements. That's spelled out in state law. So she cites the law that provides that authority. So that was item number one. Item number two, you didn't get town meeting approval to place a non-binding referendum. Again, there's specific statute that allows select boards to put non-binding questions before the electorate. So there's not a requirement to go first to town meeting. And so that's the response to number two. And then as the record shows and the tape shows that the public was able to comment at your meeting. Public comment was taken during the meeting of the 21st on the dispatch question before you took the vote. So that's a quick summary of a 4-page letter.
Right.
That has a lot more detail, but that's the Reader's Digest version.
Okay, do we need to take a vote to accept her letter?
I've got a couple of questions.
I'm just asking first.
But yes, you should.
I'll go to the board.
You would take a vote to
Okay.
allow town council to submit the letter on your behalf.
Okay. No, don't worry. Everybody should get a chance to know, but thank you for making sure that I wasn't just going right ahead. That's important. Okay, Ann Harrison, do you have any questions on this or comments?
No.
Kathy Bellata?
No.
Brian Solacey?
I'm good.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve town council
So
submitting?
there's a specific motion that she wanted you to.
Oh, yes, I did. All right.
To read.
Thank you. I move that the board adopt the response to the OML complaint from Robert Coyne with the changes discussed at this meeting, which there are none, and authorize town council to send this response on the board's behalf.
So a second.
Second.
Okay, so moved by Becky Jake, seconded by Ann Harrison. Roll call vote. John Round,
Yes?
Brian Solacey,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
Ann Harrison,
Yes.
and Becky Jake says yes. That's unanimous. I do want to formally acknowledge receipt of the open meeting law complaint from Mr. Coyne. Okay. Next, we have board committee updates.
So just before we go.
Madam Chairman.
Yeah.
Yes.
The actual claim was filed Manchester Matters Robert Coyne. And I just wanted to make sure that get in the minutes there. There's actually a group of us concerned citizens about the process that we experienced.
Could you please state your address? I'm sorry,
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Coyne. No, I'm
Robert
sorry.
Coyne, 115 B Street. And I know I personally would like to reserve comment until I have a chance to read the response from town council. I do appreciate this forum that you provided here. And I'm sure we'll be back if there's any kind of worries that we feel is not covered.
Absolutely. I didn't see that any name was on it but yours, Mr. Coyne.
I'm sorry?
I didn't see that anything else was
Yeah,
on.
I saw like 7 names.
Well, but on
Okay,
the
on the
original application of it, submission, I would state there were some errors in it. You stated that Mr. Bodmer Turner and I, when in part when you were saying who voted not to have it go to town vote,
Right.
it was actually Mr. Bowling and I who did that. It wasn't Jeff, it was Eli Bowling and I did that. Mr.
I was
Bowling,
there, I thought, I heard it pretty well. It was, Bud Turner is the one that voted no along with you. And Mr. Fetterspiel, he was also in favor of it going to town
yes,
meeting as well.
yes.
And I'm pretty sure.
Then I must be thinking about something else, so my apologies.
Okay,
Thank you.
accepted.
Okay,
We can double check.
I'm sorry?
We can double check.
We
the
can double
minutes.
check that, yeah, but, any other comments about the open meeting law violation that has been submitted? Mr. Skates?
I have a comment. I think that one of the problems.
Please state your address, I'm sorry.
Ron Skates, I live at 4 Bournemouth Avenue.
Thank you.
And you've been very gracious in letting me talk to you about this and what have you. But I think that the way this has been handled by your selectmen has unleashed a lot of angst in the community. And it's like if I invite you over for dinner and say, would you like some chocolate ice cream? And you say yes, I say, you can't have it. And so you went to a vote. When I spoke to you, I said that one of the selectmen was quoted as saying, we really shouldn't let this go to vote of the town because they'll bring in a lot of people and sort of take over the vote. Well, that's a democracy, and it's in the minutes. And I think that that's really uncalled for behavior by a select person. If I were a high school teacher, I would say that's just what's wrong with the democracy. People shouldn't do that because they're your elected official.
Mr. Skates, does this pertain to the open meeting law?
As far as I'm concerned, it does, because this is an open meeting. And
No,
I
but we're
think
talking about a specific complaint that was made.
the specific complaint was that people weren't given a fair chance to speak. And I don't think that's right in a democracy. And I think it's a lot of people in this town are really upset about it. Had it been handled differently, if you hadn't even taken it to vote, you wouldn't be hearing all this.
Right.
But going to a vote like that, we won by a clear majority, without a question.
Majority of 30, the percentage of the people who came to town vote. And that's why, let's be fair about the percentage of people who voted. It was a majority of those who voted, but not a majority of the
That's
voters.
right, and we have 2 select people here who got elected on that basis. So are you saying they shouldn't be select people?
Not what I'm saying at all, but I'm,
Well, that's the conclusion you draw from your comments.
Ron, first of all, I would like to say that
Well, listen, you've
I
been very respectful, I
recognize,
appreciate it.
I recognize that this has caused angst. And I would also like to say that some of my responses and the way I have responded have sometimes come off condescending, charged, and I'm not a politician. I'm a townsperson like you all. I'm a volunteer who is now doing more than a full-time job, trying to do the very best for this town that we all love. And yeah, sometimes when I'm on the receiving end and I'm feeling like I'm attacked, my tone may not be the best. And I do apologize for that.
Well, I hope you didn't think I attacked when we our conversation.
Not at all. No, not at all.
Because I'm very respectful of everyone here.
But
I just think
I'm
we all made a collective
apologizing
mistake.
myself right now for if my tone seems to come off and I'm trying to think, I kind of slow it down and start looking and thinking. So if it comes off as condescending, that is never my intent. Again, I'm not a politician. I'm a townsperson, just like any of you. Only I've been elected to sit here, so. And I would love if any of y'all would like to come on up here.
As an individual, I
Join.
certainly accept it. I just think that a collective mistake was made.
I would
When you
agree.
give me a cup of chocolate and take it away from me.
I don't agree that it's an open meeting law violation. I don't agree with that. I don't necessarily agree with the analogy of what might have been said was, okay, we might be providing chocolate. If we were to provide a cup of, bowl of chocolate ice cream, might you like some? That is, I think, a more appropriate analogy than, would you like chocolate ice cream? Oh, no, you can't have it. It was definitely put forth as a non-binding vote. And anyway,
Thank you for letting me speak.
but, thank you, Ron.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, will we be getting a copy of the letter?
Just state your name again, please. Sorry, you know the drill, Bob.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get you,
At the
we'll
back
be
of my
sending you a
head, I
copy.
know.
You'll get a copy of it tonight.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Brenda Furlong, 19 Ocean Street. I'd like to offer a comment and a question, and it is related. And I do hope that Sarah Malish is still on the Zoom call, because a compliment to the ZBA. As you probably have noticed in the last few days, the ZBA has put up on the town website a new tab that lists all of the correspondence that they have been receiving about a particular matter. And I personally have found it extremely helpful. I think it's very transparent. I think it's a wonderful addition to our town website. And currently there's about 120 letters on that tab that you can sort through and read different opinions. There's also a petition there that is, I think, something like 24 pages. But it's wonderful transparency and didn't seem to be an undue burden on the administrative staff. So compliment to the ZBA and a question to the select board. Are you willing to do the same thing? And are you willing to recommend to the other boards in town that they follow that example?
Funny you bring that up, Brenda. We were just talking about that exact thing Saturday at our retreat, right here. But yes, we were talking about exactly that. And so, good point. Thank you for, this shout out to Sarah and the ZBA. They've really been doing yeoman's duty. But absolutely, we are. And so, any more suggestions like that, that's very helpful.
So you are going to start posting the letters?
We're planning on, what we're planning on is getting, we're working on policies, getting those up to date. Letters typically are, and that's.
So I thought where we left off was because we have a follow-up to our retreat.
Right.
So I know I have some actions out of that to provide some sample collateral and techniques, and I think other board members have some actions as well. So we're going to gather again, I think the date is August 25th, to finalize the type of communication changes, or to take the next step in the discussion, I should say, on the types of communication changes we could implement to better serve the town.
Well, I just think, to be honest with you, I've been in town 51 years, and I've written a number of letters to prior board of selectmen. One a couple of years ago that was 6 pages in duration, and no one, my neighbors, myself, no one gets an answer, and no one even gets an acknowledgement. We don't even get a electronic response that says, thank you for your letter, we're going to
That's, yeah.
send it.
We brought that up,
Yeah.
trying to make sure, because there are, and as Sarah, I'll get over to you in a sec, honey. Whoops, I mean Sarah, didn't mean the honey, it's kind of southern thing, but, so, where was I?
You were saying that we're going to get together on the 25th, and we are going to, that meeting is
The
specifically
responses.
about dealing with communications and transparency, and therefore, we're not going to tell you tonight that we're absolutely going to put the letters up, because we're going to think about how best to do it. But we understand the frustration of sending a letter and not having any response, and
Yeah, and
we want to do something about it.
Well, good. I think that's more than acceptable. I mean, that's certainly a good time frame. And again, I just want to reiterate how wonderful the action and the initiative that the ZBA has taken has been.
Thank you very much, Brenda. Sarah Melish?
Yes, so Tiffany Marletta has updated our website. She has worked above and beyond her hours, I believe. And I think if we want that transparency across all boards, we will need a budget item to make her full-time. Because she's done a marvelous job, and it's enormous numbers of hours. Thanks.
I think one of the reasons why we are in data information collection mode on this issue is because one of the other actions we took was to go look at what other towns are doing. So for example, some towns have a portal, you know, on a particular project or whatever, and residents can add their comments and you can see everybody's comments. So I think we're all thinking that generally the same thing, and it's just a matter of understanding all the lessons learned and best technique to use for Manchester.
Okay, thank you.
So we will be following it. Any other comments? Okay.
Excuse me, can we roll back, just, I have a question on the, what started this whole discussion, and that has to do with the open meeting violation, okay? Is there a time frame? When do you expect the state's response? Is there an expectation there?
Yeah, I don't know if the state will respond if they don't have any further questions. They may just accept this response.
Just filed, but there's no action, there's no expectation of an action on the Attorney General.
Typically, if they're not satisfied, there would be follow-up.
Okay.
If they're satisfied with the response, then typically.
They close the.
They close it, yes. Yes. I'll double check with counsel on that, but you would think that they would at least acknowledge receipt.
Right.
So, speaking of that, so.
Ironic.
Well, I'll double check.
I'm just curious as to.
I know that they would follow
I guess
up.
the question is, if they're
not satisfied with the
In the event that
response,
they're not satisfied with the response.
they would be back in touch with us within a couple of weeks.
Okay. And then,
Okay, next on the agenda, board and committee updates. And first up is water resource.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much for coming in.
see you tomorrow.
Okay. Say hi to Mary Ron.
Thank you.
Okay, so next on the agenda is Water Resource Protection Task Force. And so we have Steve Gang. It looks like, and Tom Keogh both. Who wants to go first, Steve or Tom?
Mr. Gang is the chair.
Okay. Steve Gang?
A one-page or a little more than a page of update on our progress, as well as a kind of reminder of how this how this whole thing got going and what the scope and deliverables are. So I guess it's appropriate to see if there are questions or reactions about that, or whether the select board would prefer me to, with Tom's help, work our way through that document for you.
Speaking for myself, I think well, let's actually see, I'd like to see it, have all the updates sent, if they're different from the last round we received.
So we have a two-pager in your packet.
Okay.
That's what I mean, if there's not anything else beyond what's in the packet.
Well, there is a little bit of detail that you might find useful because it's going to come before you shortly. So I'm happy to go into that.
Right.
So I think,
All right,
I think it might be helpful just to do a quick summary on what's on the memo that you prepared, Steve, and then do a little deeper dive on ones that you feel would warrant that.
Surely. So the memo reviews the background, which is that in early December of last year, the then Board of Selectmen, acting in its that capacity, and I guess also in the capacity as the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners, authorized the creation of this task force and gave us membership slots to fill and generally an acceptance of, I believe, of the proposal we had made for an up to 18-month tenure for the task force and a set of objectives and deliverables. And I guess it's important to note that those deliverables were designed to get into the question of how does one implement change over the long term in areas concerning water quality and quantity. Well, because although we are very fortunate today to be blessed with adequate supply, that probably will not always be the case. And there are a lot of threats and some opportunities to look at and consider. So the memo, the update reminds of the scope, the 4 deliverables to update problems and opportunities which were identified 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago, in the 1990 report by Horsley Witten, and to prioritize those problems and opportunities and do additional fact-finding on them in order to specify some next steps, including where to spend money and time, how to organize, and what requires more detailed study over time. And then fourth and finally, the deliverable is to suggest, propose, and recommend alternatives for how to create responsibility and accountability, including the metrics to use to make sure that we stay ahead of these problems and enjoy the kind of situation which was provided to us by people acting more than 100 years ago in our behalf. Those of us on the task force kind of see our responsibility, without being too arrogant about it, to try to do again what those folks did.
Steve, I'm sorry, is anybody else having trouble or is it just me? You're going in and out a little bit?
Oh, I apologize. All right, I'll try to holler. Anyway, we set up those expectations, which you voted on in December. We created a membership. Tom, would you be good enough, if you have it in front of you, to go through the task force membership today?
Sure, yeah.
You know what, actually, hold on one moment, please.
We have that sitting in front of us.
Right.
Please don't read it to me.
I think that more of, say it again?
We just want to know where they're at this point.
Is it possible to get, I mean, we do have the list, and I'm very sorry, Steve. We've got your membership here, and I guess what we're more interested in is, what do you have specifically at this point? That's
Well, we have
an
one-
update
yeah.
from the last time we've heard from you.
Right, so we are working on this issue of long-term conservation under the first working group, which is on usage and demand. And without getting into too much detail, that group has built a database that cleansed the marvelous account by quarter volume usage for the last 10 years to eliminate duplicates and consolidate people who have different variety of different kinds of meters, commercial or residential or other. So we have a working database from which to do analysis and modeling. We've checked in on the work, eminent work done by Eli Bowling a few years ago to start the building of a model of demand and elasticity and substitution. And that should enable us to have a fact-based set of recommendations about long-term conservation, as you suggested when you voted the latest rounds of rate increases last week. On sources and supply, we're working hard on the question of, can we develop a third source? Is it economical? Will we need to? We're not talking about the next 2 or 3 years, we're talking about the next 10 or 30 years. Climate Change Group is looking at the results just emerging from the CREATE team, which was conducted along with EPA to look at the effect of climate change on, among other things, our drinking water supply. So we'll have information from that. The Quality and Contaminants Group has isolated a couple of particular concerns, which is rising levels of sodium and
Steve, I think we might have lost you. Steve?
I'm unmuted and I have a signal. Can you not hear me?
No.
Now we can.
Now you're back, couldn't before.
The last word we heard you say was sodium.
Yes, sodium and PFAS are the contaminants of concern, particularly in the Lincoln Street well. That team is looking at forensic sources of these contaminants, if they can be isolated, and trying to take the long-term look at what's going to be required for that. Citizen awareness and engagement has been preparing for a citizen survey, which will probably be launched in the fall when people's attention comes back to town and local issues. And Mr. Keogh, would you give us a synopsis of the 6th working group on responsibilities, authority, and accountability?
Yeah, the 6th working group basically is, who's responsible for what within the town, whether it's the Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners, the DPW, and how everything is accountable going back to those particular groups. We're also, all these groups are working on putting together a timeline for their main tasks. Group 1 has completed their timeline or has roughed it out at this time, and all the other groups are meeting within the next couple weeks to continue working on their timelines. So when those timelines are all done, Madam Chair and members of the board, then you will get a copy of those timelines so you can see what hopefully might get done prior to the town meeting. We're hoping that we'd be able to come to you and ask for permission to maybe put some kind of a flyer on our task out with the water and sewer bills at some point, and also have a distribution of some information about the water and the water quality in the town of Manchester to pass out at town meeting. We should also mention that you've already seen the list of members of the committee, but we would both be remiss if we didn't mention the tremendous resource that we have in Chuck Dam and Nate DeRoches to work with us and to research things and to find out what the answers that we need to find out from the town on that. It's they've been tremendously responsible. In fact, all members of the group of the task force had a tour through the Lincoln Street well, a tour up through the water treatment plant in Hamilton, and we're down to the pumping station on the side of Gravelly Pond. Many of the members of the task force have also gone on a hike led by Jeff Kosanchan around the watershed up there, including Gravelly Pond, and looking over towards Round Pond.
Yes, thanks, Tom. And apropos of that, may I also mention that we have Scott Horsley and some of his team working on questions that require geohydrological expertise. One of those is, where does the water come from that fills up Gravelly Pond and Round Pond? There are not a whole lot of surface flows into Gravelly, so we know it's, quote, spring-fed, unquote, by groundwater. But it's important to determine the direction of that groundwater, both in terms of the nearby landfills, which are fairly rich in stuff that's toxic in drinking water, as well as the roadway, Tobacco Road, and possible future development in Hamilton. So Scott Horsley has delivered to us a preliminary proposal for a very economical, high-tech approach to measuring groundwater movement into Gravelly Pond, which sounds like an excellent first step, and we'll be discussing that at our next task force meeting on August 17, and then coming before you probably with some proposal to spend some of the budget allocated at the annual town meeting to authorize Horsley and his team to do some work. So stay tuned for that.
Thank you. Any comments from the board? John Rout, who's also on the task force?
Yes, I am. So all of this, well, thankfully, most of it is all familiar to me. And just about all of it. And I just have to reiterate that there are a lot of folks that are working very hard here. I think that at the next meeting that we have, and I'm not sure when that will be.
The 17th.
Okay, yes, that's for the Water Resource Task Force, but the next time they come in front of us, there'll be concrete results that we'll be able to see. Right now, you've got kind of a layout of what is being planned, and it's really starting to materialize now. I know it looks a little kind of here and there, et cetera, but we'll really be getting down to concrete, specific results that we want from each of these 6 task forces that will probably be, we'll have preliminary data from all of them at the next meeting, I think. So,
Thank you.
Good.
Yes, and
Thank you, John.
just to underscore, reiterate, emphasize the huge amount of work
It is, a lot.
you all are doing. Brian Solacey?
Clear as mud.
Okay, there you go. Kathy Bellata?
I just want to thank the team for all of their hard work and the use, I'm very excited about the presentation of a timeline with deliverables. Yes. I am thrilled and looking forward to seeing what you guys have to say in that area.
Ann Harrison?
Nope.
Okay, I would just say thank you again, and regarding next steps, feedback on task force progress, organization process, timeline and deliverables, that's great. Scheduling of progress reports, excellent, and then advise on cooperation with Hamilton plus Essex and Wyndham. I just would like to reiterate that the task force is not given approval to reach out to other towns or organizations without first bringing it before the select board. I just wanted to reiterate that.
Would the survey come in that, survey to the town come in that category, that we would like to see the survey before?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, is that?
Yep, certainly. May I ask one question? We're certainly not going to venture out of our remit here. However, we've been contacted directly by the Board of Health in Hamilton and asked for some information and assistance. How would you like us to handle that?
I think you fall under the auspices of the select board, so that should probably come to the select board as well. Greg, what do you think on that?
Well, I guess it's, if they're looking for just sort of baseline information, I think it'd be fine for the task force to share what information they have. If they're looking for more of a recommendation or policy decision, then I think it'd be good to have the task force have a recommendation that, to present to you, that you would approve them giving to the Board of Health in Hamilton.
I would also suggest that it's, I agree with the concept of sharing what they have, but if they need to exert even 1 extra hour of work to fulfill a request or a suggested requirement from another town, I would say that has to come before our board, because it's teams that are as large as this can easily be diverted inadvertently. So I'm 100% on board with sharing what we have, but trying to fulfill somebody else's requirements that may not be part of their core charter, I would be a little bit more concerned about that.
Well said, thank you, Kathy. We accept that completely. There's so much
This is
work
my
to do.
opinion. There's 4 other people on the board who may have a different opinion.
I would say, in addition to that, even if it is a simple bit of exchange of information, I think that the town administrator and Debbie and select board should be CC'd on that, just so that we're in the loop and we know what's being discussed and shared. Does that sound reasonable? Steve?
Certainly easy to do, and we will do it. I would ask a favor in return, which is, while there's plenty for us to do within the town lines, it's very clear to us that long-term solutions are going to require greater collaboration with Hamilton, probably Essex and Wenham as well, because the solutions will be to problems we share down the road, the use of the watershed. So the favor I would ask is, could you do what you can to open up those channels of communication, which appear from where I sit to be a little bit constricted and closed with reference to Hamilton after our vote on refusing the land swap to relocate Tobacco and our consternation over their plan to pave it in place.
Okay, we have to be a little careful of that. That's not on the agenda. So what I would say is, in terms of the task force and recommendations that would be made to the select board, that would extend, some of those recommendations are then also to reach out to other communities. Does that make sense?
In other words, you wouldn't want to do anything until we make formal recommendations to you?
I
think. Understand that?
Yeah, if I may, some of the things that we need to do, we need to gather some information in order to make those recommendations. And so that would precede the recommendations themselves, but I think that the task force will certainly keep this group informed, the select board informed, if that, when and if that needs to be done. I won't say if, when it needs to be done.
Well, and that, it's one thing to reach out to another community asking for information. It's another for the task force to reach out with recommendations prior to those coming before the board.
This would be we're looking for information, we're not looking.
But I would say, yes, absolutely, but I think the board does need to be CC'd, as does either Greg, probably Debbie, and Debbie could give it to Greg if need be. Greg, what do you think? Do you want to be CC'd or let it go to Debbie?
Debbie's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I would, gathering information, I think, is fair game for the task force to do, and just keeping everyone appraised of what information they're seeking and gathering. So it's just again those open lines of communication.
Excellent.
I'm slightly.
But one moment, please, Steve.
Slightly concerned that in controversial areas, and land use and water are always controversial in, I don't want Manchester to be seen as trying to interfere with the internal politics of Hamilton or any other town.
Mhm.
And having one of our boards support one of their factions without understanding the whole picture of their politics is worrisome.
I agree. My personal recommendation would be, I'd like to see this timeline of the task force's activities and the deliverables and the outcomes they expect to achieve, and where they need information from other towns, or whatever barriers they may have to completing their tasks and their timelines. It could be information from other towns, it could be something else. They communicate that to us as part of that presentation, and then we will be fully informed as to what they need, when they need it. Is that possible to show us at our, a meeting within this month? I mean, how quickly can that be done?
Well, they're meeting on the 17th, we're meeting on the 15th, is it, or? Greg, so would that communication, the types of questions that, and this is, to be creating more levels of or more points of contact and questioning, but is that something best a select board person reaches out to another select board who then reaches out to the proper board? I mean, that just seems convoluted, but we don't want, as the point has been made, we don't want to step on toes or offend. Maybe we need to think on this a little bit.
Or is it the one town administrator to another, right? I mean, I think.
This is where I'm very reluctant. I mean, we don't need to put any more on that.
That's right.
That's, you can't even,
I'm happy to facilitate that at sort of my level and with my colleague in another town. That often is helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, since we don't have any specifics about who or what areas might need to be contacted in these other towns, I immediately went to suggest Greg. But if there's a particular core area and it's, Chuck Dam's counterpart in Hamilton, I'm sure they have a relationship already. I'm just wondering if this is an operational detail, that the gathering of information that the board doesn't really have to get involved in at all.
Well, and to that point, I mean, you don't want that sort of seeming bureaucratic quagmire that just gums it up or slows it down. And John, who's sitting over there biting his tongue.
Yeah, I am.
Back to you.
And we need to sit down with Chuck with regard to the specifics there, because the groups that he interacts with, I wouldn't be surprised if quite a few questions that we're sitting here asking, he knows, because he informally speaks with these people pretty frequently.
Right. So we might not need to.
So there might be just very few pieces of information that we really got to thread a needle with, but the rest, it's kind of general knowledge that has just been exchanged over the various meetings he's been at. So we need certainly to go down that path first.
And would that be something just board to board, like sewer and water, or DPW to DPW kind of thing, or is that?
Oh, so I think, so the task force has their groups.
Right.
They may have specific questions
That's what I
or
mean.
information needs. Sue Croft is the staff support to the task force, so she can assemble those information needs, and she and I can discuss who and which department might be able to get that information quickly and easily for the task force. So I don't think that doesn't need to go before this group and all of that.
And that's the point you made with the Saturday thing.
We don't need to know.
Right.
We don't need to.
Right.
So, okay, good.
So, yeah, I don't want to overly complicate this by any means.
As it is, it's clear as mud.
Okay, Steve, did you want to say one more thing on that before we move on?
Oh, just thank you. Thanks for the advice and thanks for the support.
Thank you for your time, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Steve, very much. We're a little bit behind, gentlemen, so. Next up is update on the Affordable Housing Trust. I can't talk, trust. Muffin, I think we have Muffin here. There you are. Hello.
Hi, everybody. So we're on the agenda
Driscoll.
tonight to
Did you-
just,
Muffin Driscoll, the Manchester Affordable Housing Trust.
oh,
Manchester
sorry.
Housing.
Sorry, I apologize. So we're on, the Affordable Housing Trust is on your agenda tonight, just to provide you an update in terms of the RFP that the Affordable Housing Trust and the Housing Authority have been working on since beginning of February. We've met twice a month since then, and through the hard work of Sue Brown, our planner, and members on the trust, John Feuerbach and Chris Only, have put together the RFP. It has been passed by and through town council at least 2, maybe 3 times, and with their assistance made some adjustments. So it's, we are hoping that we can get it on the central register sometime around the date of August 15th. So through Greg, I believe he included the RFP in your packets, and we just kind of wanted to update you on where we were.
Excellent. This is, you all have been working on this more than since February, but this particular aspect, so it's very exciting. Any questions from John Round? Any questions?
Yeah, I just have one question. I looked through the packet, Muffin, and certainly affordable housing is a key part of this initiative. Just kind of blue skying ideas, is it possible that one might solicit some 40B developer, not that I want to dredge that up necessarily, but as to kind of help with that? In other words, might they play a role in the development, in particular, say Pleasant Street,
That is, it is a possibility, John. Hard to know who's going to be interested until we can get it out on the street in the form of that RFP.
Seems to me it might make sense. We'll see.
It's our starting point to hopefully have a conversation with a developer or 2, or maybe more than that.
Yep.
Brian?
I just want to echo, I think that a 40B will work really well in this application.
Thank you. Kathy, Bellotta?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with these two. I think we might need to go down that road, but it's just good to keep it as in our back pocket if it's needed.
Right.
The other thing is, so the RFP I thought was excellent, really comprehensive. A couple of points I just wanted to mention for your consideration as you, hopefully get some responses back. Actually, a question first. The time frame by which we might actually start to build or renovate something, is it 2 to 5 years? What's the time frame we're really talking about?
Right, well, that truly is hard to know until the conversations can begin with a developer. And of course, the other piece is there will need to be a town meeting vote in terms of use of the Pleasant Street property.
Right.
Before anything really would advance.
So I'm just asking best and worst case, though.
You know what, I would not want to put.
Okay.
I think until we can get it out on the street and see if there's even a response to the RFP.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So what I would ask then, since we don't know what the timing is, I would ask us to be very future oriented in our assessment of the RFPs. And a couple of things I didn't see mentioned, I have to mention it because it's my background, and that's technology. And electric vehicle charging. So if
Mm-hmm.
these places
Yep.
wouldn't be built for 5 or 10 years, God knows when, we can expect, we'd want to make
Right.
sure that the cell signals are great because, you're not going to be relying on wired Comcast type connections. You'd want to make sure that there were electric vehicle charging options, just some things. Those are just two examples of being future oriented, as well as I was really happy to see the sustainability and the lead checklist in there. I thought that was great, but that would be my only comment. Looks good.
Absolutely, thank you.
To the resident who's got their hand up, I'll come back to you after the board's had an opportunity to speak, but I do see that you are there. Ann Harrison?
Well, I echo the recommendation that we seriously consider a friendly 40B. 40B's got a bad reputation in town at the moment, but we have had earlier 40B projects that have benefited the town a lot. And a friendly 40B would overcome my reservation about this RFP, which is that it's clear that it's market rate housing will be a major part of the Pleasant Street, and we might find ourselves without a 40B moving actually backward on our subsidized housing inventory if this plan goes forward without increasing the number of actually affordable units. Whereas with a 40B, we could count the market rate units in our SHI. So I don't know what we can do to improve the reputation of the 40B laws in town, but
just to find a reputable
oh,
developer.
yeah.
And they're out there. They are out there.
And it would be nice if this project, in addition to renovating housing that desperately needs it, also increased the
Sure.
Yeah, I hope we can create more units where there are already units, and it would be nice to be able to count market rate in the SHI and just get the pressure off the town.
Yeah, I would like to say, this obviously shows a lot of work, and I appreciate the tie-in between the market rate and renovation of what we have, if not, vast improvements of. Muffin, did you want to say anything else to?
No, I'm all set.
Okay, then to the resident with the hand up, if you would please lower your hand and state your name and address, please.
Great. Sandy Rogers, Old Essex Road. Question for Muffin, I guess.
What number Old Essex, Sandy?
Hello?
The number of Old Essex?
82 Old Essex Road.
And the chair will allow that.
Great. Question is the RFP currently visible for residents to look at? And or if not, when it is finalized, where will it be?
So it is currently not available because we're at the selectmen's meeting tonight, just looking for any last minute feedback. I would imagine that once it is publicly posted on the central register, that we would provide that RFP as a link on the Affordable Housing Trust site on the town website.
And so there's not going to be any review with abutters to any of the properties before you put the RFP out?
No.
Okay, and where is the central register that you speak of? I don't know where that is.
And I'm going to ask Sue Brown to answer that question, our town planner. Sue?
So that's it's an online publication that lists all RFPs, requests for interest, requests for proposals. Happy to, if you Google that, you will find it. It's not It's not a location as such except on the web.
So it's for Massachusetts.
Yes, it's for Massachusetts where all municipal contracts go
Okay,
and others.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sue.
So, as an agenda item, the draft is in your packet, which is posted on the website. So that draft is
There you go.
is part of the PDF that is part of tonight's agenda package.
It's on the link, Sandy. You should be able to, did you try to click on the agenda packet?
Yeah, no, I didn't click on the agenda packet. I was just looking at the Housing Authority site to see if I could find it, so I'll look at that. Thank
Yeah, give
you.
it a try on the packet, okay?
Fabulous, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Muffin. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, thank you very much, Muffin. And please thank everybody on the Affordable Housing Trust as well.
Sure will.
Thank you. Up next, we have Western Woods update and then your Sue Brown.
Hi, Q. Thanks for having me come and provide an update on this. I think Greg sent around a quick review, so you might have something in front of you now, and I won't read it, but I will just go over the 3 general initiatives that are going on in the Western Woods as part of our thoughts, our idea that we would like to preserve that general area. What isn't on that, and what you already know, I think, but maybe some folks that are listening might not know, is that for some time the town has been doing research in that area to understand how many parcels, who owns the parcels in the Western Woods. 5 years ago, we knew a lot less about the Western Woods and the ownership, but through some great research with funding from CPA, we now know that the town owns a fair amount of land in there that we previously may not have been aware of and that we previously didn't manage as such, as open space. So once we found out that we were a principal landowner there, and knowing that the other principal landowner in the Western Woods is Manchester Essex Conservation Trust, we know that, I don't know, maybe 2/3 of the land in the Western Woods has an opportunity to be preserved. So a couple years ago, we started down the road of understanding what that would mean and soliciting community input on it. And here we are. So the 3 initiatives that are underway now is a forest management plan. We have been trying to do this for a couple years now. I've gotten stalled a little bit from lack of work from a previous forester, but we now have a new forester on board. He was boots on the ground today, in fact, and he will be looking at all town-owned land in the Western Woods, documenting the resource value, mapping it, and in the end, coming up with a series of recommendations for land management based on the community's goals. I see Patrice is on from MECT, so I'm going to give a little shout to say that we're hopeful that MECT will run a similar process because technically we can only do the lands that we control. We can only report on those lands that we control, and we're hopeful that MECT will run a similar process so that we have a plan that covers both. And we're hopeful that the recommendations come out will really show a unified approach to that roughly 500 acres in the Western Woods. The other thing that we're doing and that is underway is the Open Space and Recreation Committee receives funding from the CPA to do deed research, in particular to identify public rights of way into the Western Woods. We know that, we believe that some exist, and we believe that over time some are being lost as land changes hands. Houses get built, and I think rights of way may be lost. And so we're doing, we've hired a a researcher to research. We're starting with about 12 parcels, and we're checking to see, she's checking to see if there's deeded rights of way into Western Woods. As we find them, if we find them, and as we find them, we would like to make sure that they're documented, that they're signed, and then they're properly managed so that they stay open forever. The third thing that we're doing in the Western Woods is we have an active stewardship partner with Cape Ann Trail Stewards who regularly walk the paths and provide trail maintenance. And they also do identify projects that might be done. And I think I listed just a few things that they've done in addition to regular trail maintenance and reporting back to us on any issues. They've better maintained some trails, the yellow trails in there. And they just recently provided a kiosk that we hope to put at the Crooked Lane entrance, at the end of Crooked Lane. And we really want to use that kiosk to provide information to the community members who use that trail and others, talk about the fact that these trails do pass over both public and private lands, and, you know, talk about how to treat those lands and to be respectful. So we see it as a good opportunity to provide some information there. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Sue. John Round, do you have any questions?
Just I guess an observation. I'm looking at all of the information here, Sue, and you've got a lot of things underway here to kind of make this space more useful, I guess, to the townspeople. I've only been in there once in the past 20 years, but I plan to go back here, I think, fairly soon and find out more about what's going on. I see that a lot of the land here, it's, what does it says, owner unknown, or well, I can't quite read all of it.
Other owner.
Other owner, something like that. This is all pretty much landlocked land, so it's really can't have any other use. Is that all kind of part of your plans? We're obviously collaborating with the MECT, but are there any plans for those lands, incorporating that into what's there, or has there been talk with those owners at all, or?
Thank you for that question, John. Yes, so there are a number of lands that are privately owned. I have sent out some time ago when we were first getting ready to do the forest management plan, I sent a letter to all the landowners just to let them know what we were doing, what we're hoping to do long-term, and letting them know that if they had any interest in selling, that we would certainly, or providing trail access or CRs, that we would love to talk to them. So the long-term strategy would be to own or have CRs on as many of the properties as that we can, so that we can maintain that existing and expand the trail system in there. So acquisition, either in fee or, as I said, a CR or a trail easement, is certainly part of the long-term plan. I expect that as we finish the land management plan, that some recommendations will come out of that, including maybe targeting the ones that maybe are most important to maintaining the trail system.
Okay.
But
Just
yes,
point of
acquisition.
clarification. Oh, sorry, Sue. I was just going to say, point of CR is conservation restriction.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian, policy?
No, I'm good. I mean, it's
Kathy
moving its
Bel-
way.
Kathy Bellata?
I have no questions.
Ann Harrison?
No questions.
I'm good. Thank you very much. And looks like Therese Murphy from MEC would like to speak. Go ahead and put your hand down and unmute yourself, Therese.
All right, I'm Patrice Murphy from Manchester Essex Conservation Trust. We like to call it MECT rather than MECT. We're thrilled that the town is interested in more conservation in this area. And we have not acted on the forest management plan, although Sue has provided us all the information. It's more a matter of priorities and goals at this time for our organization. So we'll be taking a look at it, and we have considerable interest in this area as well.
Thank you, Patrice, and thank you for stating the preference of MECT. Okay, that takes care of board and committee updates and brings us to Sand Dollar Code discussion. Greg, would you like to start this off?
Sure. So, Sand Dollar Cove has been a topic of conversation off and on for a number of years. The challenge is how to keep the area safe and available for folks to use. So how do we manage it without over-managing and restricting people's freedom of use? So that's a balancing act, and one that ebbs and flow, if I can use that phrase in this case.
Look at Debbie.
So a couple weekends ago, there were 2 events out on the water that created quite a crowd. I'll let Brian and Todd speak to that. A lot of boats, a lot of people, more than our staff could really handle and manage safely. So that just raises concerns. How do we continue to manage the area with the large crowds that we are attracting on occasion? So that's the question before us. I'm not expecting to solve that tonight, but sort of tee it up for future conversations. We do have some short-term efforts that have already gotten underway that both the chief and harbor master can speak to, and I'll let them do that. But it also, I think, requires a longer conversation at a future meeting to decide whether or not we need to revisit the topic of creating a day-use mooring field out in the area that would have a certain cap on the number of boats that could tie up and use the area. But that's a discussion for another night, not tonight, but I just wanted to put it out there because it is something that has been talked about in the past, and I think probably needs to be brought up again for conversation. But let me turn it over to both the chief and the harbor master, and they can give you a little more better flavor of what it was like out there a couple weekends ago, and then some of the short-term measures that they've been able to implement, and some thoughts on going forward.
Yeah, you were out there running around. So I'll tell you that we had at least equal to, potentially greater than the greatest number of boats we've ever had at one beach. It was 300 plus boats. The average that I use is 4 people per boat, which would mean 1,200 people out there. And it's my understanding that people were being shuttled by boat from land out there, so the number was probably higher. For a lot of the people I heard from afterward was, oh gee, it was a huge crowd, but we didn't see any real problem. A lot of that perception comes, I think, from the efforts of the staff, police and fire, harbor, in the 2 boats out there slowing traffic down. It's a very conscious effort on our part. I believe strongly that boats going slowly as they enter into the mooring field and the anchorage makes it just that much safer rather than the boats racing in, potentially in amongst the huge crowds at the beach. There is last year there were swim buoys put around the beach to help keep the boats away from the beach. Massachusetts has a law, no boats within 150 feet of a beach, public or private, used for swimming. So those buoys were very helpful. About 3:30, in the midst of the huge volume of traffic coming and going, I got call from dispatch that someone had called in and asked that we go over and remove floats and a very large number of boats that had moved themselves into the swim area, or inside the swim area, and on private docks out at Gales Point, using private property as part of their event. So went over and wasn't the best
What was the
confrontation I've ever
response?
had. It was,
What was the response you received?
it's the first time I've ever been moved in Manchester.
And how many tickets did you issue?
None.
None.
None. So my goal was to get compliance. Let's get the boats out of there. But for me to start writing civil violations in that environment all by myself, it wouldn't have been a good environment for a single police officer to be writing tickets over there. So there were none written, not one. So after that, as I understand it, there were phone calls made to town hall. There was lots of underage drinking over there, which I have no enforcement authority over. Also have no enforcement authority over trespassing. The only thing at that moment that I believe I could have enforced, which I did, was the boats in the swimming area. And had it been a safe enough environment, I could have done safety checks on every one of those vessels. But it was not, so I did not. We cleared the boats out of the swimming area to make it safe for those folks who wanted to access the beach from land.
I would just like to say, I'm very sorry you were treated that way. I'm appalled at that behavior. That's just, it's not okay.
Well, I was pretty upset, but not at the doing, the fact that the people did it. I didn't take any of that personally.
All of it.
But thank you.
Sorry, Diane.
The other boat was out there as well, as we know, the orange boat. Its mission is a little bit different. We have the Eastern specifically for accessing that part of our water where it was maybe a couple of feet deep. I was able to go into the Eastern, our new yellow boat. The orange boat couldn't get in there. Just, it couldn't. And to be honest with you, when it's that crowded, we don't like to go in there just because of the risk of the people in the water, the number of boats, the anchor lines everywhere. That would have been a great shot on Facebook if either one of the boats had snagged an anchor line with us hanging over the back of the boat trying to untangle it. So there does become a point where going in there, even with the vessels we have, is a questionable decision.
There's no shortage of shots from above.
Yeah.
And other points at what transpired.
Madam Chair, I have a procedural question.
Yeah.
So did the company that sponsored the event, okay, did they have permission from the Coast Guard?
So there were two events. Marine Max, the boat dealer, had a Coast Guard permit. I went back because I thought I remembered that the other event was also permitted, and I found the communication from the Coast Guard about the other event, which was the larger of the two, and the Coast Guard determined that the event, let's see, the event does not meet the requirements for issuance of a Coast Guard marine event permit.
Really?
Yes, exactly.
Do you have a copy of what permit was submitted? I'm just curious.
So we don't get copies of those permits. Coast Guard gets these requests. Are required that we have now had a half a dozen different events in the harbor since I've been here. Most start out with, they show up and they do it, and then I tell them no more events until you make your request to the Coast Guard. Coast Guard will reach out to us and tell us if they issued the permit, which they did with the Marine Max.
So we don't get a say before they issue the permit? That sounds a little backwards.
It is a little backwards. Well, I think we have great line of communication with the Coast Guard. Matter of fact, the chief reached out to the Gloucester station, not the issuing station. That comes from Boston, but the chief was able to set up a meeting with Chief Bridges, who runs the station, and myself, and we all sat down. Coast Guard agreed that for the balance of the season, they're going to send a boat down on Saturday or Sunday during the height of our weekend day.
And again, that's their staffing.
Yeah.
You know, it
Right.
obviously depends on their staffing and weather.
So that's nice, but my question is really about, I'm trying to follow the lines of accountability. And have we called up Marine Max in Danvers and said, hey, do you know that the event you sponsored caused us a problem? And we had to exercise this many hours of manpower. Here's the bill.
So they originally advertised the event and were refusing to get a permit. And I held their feet to the fire and said, don't show up without the permit because you'll be removed. So they did get the Coast Guard permit.
What?
We did get word of the permit. I think going forward, and the chief and I have talked about this, we're going to ask the Coast Guard to have additional requirements.
Right.
Notify the town, you must get a town permit, and potentially also a police detail.
Which
The
they will
event
pay for.
organizers will have to pay for an officer, a vessel, and a vessel operator to be out in the area. So that's sort of, those are the things that we'll be telling the Coast Guard we need in order for them to issue their permit for events going forward in Manchester.
So do the two events overlap?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, because I was smack dab in the middle of the private event. Okay. From what I observed, it was peaceful, it was fun. I wasn't aware of the other issues that you've just spoken to. So what was the other event?
The
Marine Max,
What was
like
that?
Aquapalooza,
So where was that?
Marine Max is a boat dealership up on Route
Yes.
1.
Mhm.
Theirs was further out the harbor, and you could see theirs because they had those flags that looked like feathers on the back of the boat.
So the confluence of events.
So that event, Bion, was not near the other event?
They did not violate the swim area.
Okay.
Yes, they
So
were
it
further
was
out.
the other event
It was the
that
other event.
encroached on private property?
Now, there was plenty of drinking at both events. There was a lot of drinking at that beach. And there was lots of underage drinking at that beach.
And a lot of pollution left, from what I've been told.
Right.
A lot of garbage left. Not only on shore, but
In the water.
in the water.
So I still have questions around the accountability. So Marine Max, all the boat dealers do this. Marine Max does North Shore and Bosun's does Aquapalooza and you got, they all do their thing, right?
Yeah.
So, but it sounds like you've got a good trail for the future to try and, prevent something like that from the Marine Max standpoint. But what about the private event? Is there any accountability there? Was there pollution? Was there something that was a finable offense or something? How do we hold these people accountable? Because without that,
Right. So
I don't know what we're talking about.
I'm less inclined to do the look back and do, the armchair Monday morning punishment. I would much rather come up with a plan to prevent it from happening ever again. So the chief and I are talking specifically about the steps to take. The first step the chief took, he reached out to the Coast Guard and said, hey, we had this problem. That was an over-the-top problem, but this area it's overrun almost every weekend. And because of this meeting the chief set up, we're getting a little bit of help from the Coast Guard, which translates into, we don't know when these guys are coming, so we have to behave a little bit better. That's sort of a, this year right now, quick fix while we put in place the next steps with the Coast Guard, and then what the town wants to do, if anything, about managing the events and the crowds in general going forward.
Yeah, I think my suggestion would be similar to what we do with the Parks and Rec, is have a special event. The town has a special event permit, and then you, as a board, would approve or disapprove with that certificate.
So that is that directed towards like the private party that happened? Yes, okay, good, all right.
You could capture both.
Yes,
Yeah.
capture both, right, okay, so that's good. My other question is, have you called the harbor master in Hull to see what they do? Because it's just like World's End, right?
World's End, Hull, Situate,
Right.
Aquapalooza. I talked to the harbor master about the Aquapalooza off Petix, and he was telling me what a huge event that is at 175 boats. And
Yeah.
So by way of comparison, on Sunday, day after the event, I was called over. I was going through Sandala Cove and was called over by a boater from Gloucester. And the boaters on the vessel said to me, so we were here yesterday and we were at the Greasy Pole. And what happened here was wilder, scarier than what happened at the Greasy Pole.
Again, the Greasy Pole was well enforced with Coast Guard, environmental police, Gloucester police.
Yeah, and the harbor master, they had all kinds of assets out there.
So Todd, the officer who was on call, what was that officer's?
He was on the orange boat, forcing the no
so
wake.
he couldn't get in.
Yeah, he couldn't get in there, correct. So if we take a look back at why we have two boats out there on the weekends, the reason I requested a second boat is not just because of area 7. It's because the folks east of us at White
Cove.
Beach, Black Beach, Kelp Cove, Magnolia, those folks said to me, you aren't doing your job. You're not coming up here. You're not dealing with our issues. And I said, the greater problem is here, and I have one boat. So that second boat works back and forth between, actually both boats do sort of working in tandem. I believe to this day that the reason we haven't had a propeller strike, a horrible accident at Long Beach, is because we stop people at the no wake pools.
Right.
Period. Skip Crocker said to me today, you know, it's interesting to look when there's no boat right there, even on a busy weekend day. 85% of the boats hit those no wake buoys and slow down to almost.
Can we extend them out further?
Well, if we do, we'll be in Beverly.
We're out pretty far.
I've got them out all the way to the very end of the channel. So the washing machine is out there, and it's away from the anchored vessels until a weekend like last, when the boats were anchored almost to half-tide rock,
John, did you have any questions?
Yes, I mean, the one thing that concerns me here is the Coast Guard. These organizations know they have to get permits from the Coast Guard, and I assume that they do.
They don't all know.
They don't all know, but they do. But it concerns me that the Coast Guard doesn't tell the community that's involved. And that, I mean, that should be, seems to me, you're gonna have to chip away at this a little bit at a time. That's gotta be number one, so that you know something's going on. Now, you can intervene in whatever way, and we can talk all night about that, but we need to know that something's going on. Did the Coast Guard say anything about, well, this is the way we do it? That just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, so we did get a single email from Coast Guard about the Marine Max event a day or two before the event. So again, this goes to when we communicate with them, communicating in a timely manner to give us time to make sure all the pieces are in place.
These things are advertised like more than a month in advance.
Is there an apply by date for a permit? Can someone apply the day before?
They're supposed to apply, I believe, 3 months in advance.
Okay.
That's
And
tough.
they don't,
I've been to, so our Misery Challenge, when I told Josh that it's not happening again without your marine permit, he started, I think 5 months before, we were going to meetings in February with the Coast Guard about that event. But that, because of the rowing and the paddling and the swimming, that rose to a very high level from the Coast Guard perspective. The first year, they sent a boat.
I mean, when we do the fireworks, it's 6 months out, 7 months out.
Right. Right. So I think a lot of it has to do with how big of an event it is from their perspective. So I think it's going to be on us to help them understand that this is exacerbating an existing problem with these events. Coming to a place where it's not uncommon to have upwards of 200 boats on a weekend with no events. 800 people with no events. So that's a lot of people. Think about that many people in Masconomo Park.
did the officer who was there want to speak?
No, I talked to him and he was basically said, they were enforcing the no wake zone and couldn't get in there. And he said he was one person and with all those people, it would be very difficult to.
I thought that boat always had 2 people.
It did.
It did.
There were
It
2
had
people.
Had a
one officer.
Had a harbor master, one of Byron's assistants.
Okay.
A boat doesn't patrol or perform any activity other than maybe going to get fuel or doing a maintenance run with less than 2 people.
Okay.
There's no way that boat would be out there on a weekend with 1 person.
I just think if we can have you guys approve a town special event permit, it would give us time to plan ahead. And again, it's gonna go back to my staffing issues with the quality trained officer that's trained on the boat. So, and like I looked it up, we've only been able to staff 4 times this year. Fortunately, that was a day that we were able to do it, but could have used 2.
The orange boat was actually, when I got the call from dispatch, the orange boat was doing a patrol through the beach as close as it could get safely at the time. Impossible for that boat to go where I was. Different.
Were you alone?
On the yellow boat, oh yeah. That boat goes alone almost always. Unless we have a young person who's training, then a lot of times we'll take that one.
Generally, that seems, but when you know that there are 2 events that are going to happen.
I didn't have the
They
staff.
didn't know.
I didn't have the staff to have 2 people on that boat that day.
So this is staffing as well. I mean, it's staffing, sort of public safety staffing.
So,
as
well, unique to on the water, correct?
Brian was
I was gonna say
next.
that, so in the future, if, as Chief says, there's an event application, potential exists that we could have denied one of them. Okay, and said, no, something's already going on right now, pick another date.
All right, Kathy, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was following up and wanted to clarify what you said. This was about on the water staffing, under the harbor master's budget, not necessarily
Well, so.
But enforcement comes from.
the
from the police department.
police
From
the police department.
Police officers are paid from a sum of money that's in your budget, my budget.
So, because what I was getting at was the financial trail here. So if staffing became something we had to discuss during the budget season, where would that money come from, like mooring fees or waterway fees, or as opposed to general taxation, et cetera, because this is a problem that is unique to certain folks. That was one line of thought. The other question was, is this we can't be the only ones dealing with this. So what does the harbor master in Beverly have to say, or, you know, Gloucester, is there an opportunity for some cooperation?
Mutual aid.
Yeah, mutual aid, exactly, that's the right phrase for it.
Yeah.
Or planning, mutual, you know, because if Marine Max comes to Manchester and we say, no, they're gonna go to Beverly, or they're gonna go to Gloucester, and we're just moving the problem around, right?
Right, so if in conversation with other harbor masters, all harbor departments are in the same boat as we are. It's extremely hard to find staff. We're lucky, we have great staff, and 3 people is generally all we'd ever need for a weekend day. For if we're going to do the typical enforcement, which amounts to making sure the beaches are being appropriately patrolled east of here, and we're managing the no wake. As far as what happens at Long Beach, there's always been minimal amount of direct in amongst the scrum management of what goes on there. We are reactive. We'll get calls from property owners who will say there is a boat on the beach. Well, then we immediately go in, because we're not going to turn into Windershee. We're not going to turn into Cranes Beach. We're not going to have Manchester become one more community where people can't go to the beach safely because of boats on the beach. So, but we're reactive. We're not proactive.
Well, and these are posted private properties. So these are people trespassing on private properties when you're in Long Beach and Sand Dollar Cove, those beaches.
Now, there have been other events that, I mean, we're in 2022. Sand Dollar Cove's been there a long time. Have there been other events that you've been aware of, perhaps after the fact? Obviously, none of them created this kind of problem, but.
Very first one out there was a concert some folks from Marblehead organized. And I found out, I'm lucky, I have people who call me, hey, Brian, on Facebook, there's gonna be a concert on Labor Day. So, and I got a phone number and I called the boat owner, and I said, the band leader, I said, you gotta call the Coast Guard and get a permit. Got it. So it was 11th hour, but they made phone calls, and Coast Guard called me, and I said, you know, not without your permit, they can't do it. And they said, well, we're gonna issue a permit and we'll stand by in case you need help. Weather wasn't great that day. So it was a concert, there were probably 175 boats. And then this other musical gathering with the Rastafarians, I think is the name of the name, has happened 2 or 3 other times. But after, only with the Coast Guard permit, you know, them reaching out to get a permit and then didn't need one.
This is the first year that you need one?
No, if I were to go back and check, I think most of them say the same thing, that it doesn't rise to the level. But they're made to jump.
Yeah, what's critical
What
there?
makes it rise to
How
the
many
level?
boats?
Yeah, it rises to the level. It would be my intention for that event to never happen again without a Coast Guard permit, without a police detail.
That a town permit.
And a
So
town
if we
permit.
were to get the one-day event application that you want, can we make it contingent upon getting a Coast Guard permit as well?
Yeah, police detail too.
Or like it's private, like Ceto, Okay, as part of getting your permit, you have to pay for a sea tow boat out there, you know, something, some other, anything, they were hanging around some of these other events
Yeah.
just because they know there's
Yes.
business there.
Because they know.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's a matter of.
So,
Okay.
but just paying for what, well, the help is.
I have, I'm sorry, I realize it's getting late,
No,
but I
no,
do
no,
have.
go ahead. Yeah.
I don't know anything about this. I have a pretty good idea what the Marine Max was doing. And I gather that they were further out in the water that's wet all the time.
All the time, that's where they were, yeah.
And that the other event, which I know, I gather somebody knows something about it, but I know nothing about it. What was that?
That was a family celebration.
Okay.
That's how I would determine it. It's 5 years ago, the 50th birthday celebration.
So do we know who the family is? And I'm not asking you to say that, I'm just asking, we do know, and had they come to talk to anybody in advance about saying, we want to have this party?
Well, they did, and they did go to the Coast Guard. They sent me the email, we're gonna do this, great, reach out to the Coast Guard. They did it. Clearly, the level of participation has escalated pretty dramatically from the first year. It's like anything.
It's word of mouth.
Discover a thing, word of mouth. The Marine Max is in some ways very worrisome to me because we had a lot of boats come that had never been here before. And they came and it was Mardi Gras, it was spring break. So
I would suggest that the local one, the private party was all locals for them, for.
yeah, it was.
Okay,
Well-
the next thing that is the underage drinking. Is that done by families, or was Marine Max handing out beers? Was the family? Yeah, or is this just, hey, we're out on the water, you're 16, have a beer with us, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, Marine Max, there was drinking. I don't know if it was underage drinking at that event. I do not know. In passing through, when you drive by and somebody yells, "Hey, buddy," to the harbor master,
It's usually a clear indicator.
no, that's the first indication to me that maybe there might be some drinking going on.
Okay,
But
was anybody selling liquor?
I have no idea. We weren't
Is that
in
part
there
of the permit process? Does the Coast Guard care?
about the drinking. I certainly assume they do, but there's no permit issued by the Coast Guard that would allow anyone to sell liquor. Absolutely not.
So in these circumstances, people, they show up with their own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
BYOB.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that,
Yeah.
what we need to do is, and you have a bit of a hike, we obviously have more to do on this. I would like to find out what specifically the Coast Guard permit requires, what their guidelines are. Can I just go online and find that?
I don't know for sure. If you can navigate the federal website, you'll be doing really well.
Yeah.
These applications, excuse me, have to go through Boston?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm sure we can find out.
Yeah, we can. I know for a fact if I reach out to Tim Chase in Boston, he'll forward that.
Can you get that information for us then?
I'm sure.
Would you get that
Of
information?
course they do.
Also, I think that, it would be good to know what types of, criteria you would like on permits for us to discuss. If you all want to.
I had one other general comment. My experience is that the Coast Guard does not have landing craft or shallow boats,
Correct, so.
and they don't swim.
Same capacity as the, our orange, safe boat.
Probably not, probably even deeper,
Yeah,
because
this
they're
is-
the next generation.
They came in the, Coast Guard 29,
Uh-huh.
which is the same draft, but they too are going to be judicious. They're gonna peck around the edges and grab the one that's coming off.
What we need to do is move the events out into deeper water. Or one of the things that might help would be to move the events out into deeper water, so so the Coast Guard could be useful, and so the orange boat, hope to be a green boat soon, would be able to patrol.
So the challenge becomes restricting anchoring. We don't have the authority to do that, except in a swim area.
As a part of our permit process, could the town require?
If it's restricting anchoring, I don't think so. Only the Coast Guard has the right to restrict anchoring.
Okay.
We could ask the Coast Guard
Yeah.
that anchoring be restricted to a depth of no less than 5 feet at low tide.
So we can request that.
We could request it.
And I think we have good reason to do that.
Yeah.
Because it makes it possible for the Coast Guard to help us.
And what about the day use moorings?
Wow. So that's kind of that's a hot topic. Last time we broached this, we had 170 people sign a petition not to do it, which led to the decision not to do it. I think that's potentially a discussion for a whole evening. Maybe the other ideas that the chief and I have had for what may be appropriate to do as far as staffing goes out there. With that, be here a while.
And I think we need to come back to that.
I think we need to think about this some before we, and get the Coast Guard permit regulations.
Yeah. Question, where is we haven't mentioned the environmental police at all?
So.
Where do they fit in?
So it's a staffing issue.
Well, that wasn't my question though.
Right.
What is their responsibility? Because when I get boarded, they're the ones that do it.
Oh, really? Are you fishing usually?
No, they just do the safety checks. Right in
So-
Boston Harbor, they'll just, especially on 4th of July, I can't get it, right?
Coast Guard, environmental police, harbor master, state police patrols, Gloucester police, any waterfront oriented enforcement agency has the legal right to board any vessel and do a safety check
Absolutely.
without exception. We could ask MEP to be here during these events as well, but they're going to determine that.
Well, what I'm trying to get at is, I don't think it should be all on us. And so I'm asking these questions to just kind of poke around to see who else could we get help from? And understanding there's a staffing issue, but staffing is usually a result of a budget shortfall, which these people who want to hold these events should be paying for, right? I don't want our tax dollars to go up because outsiders are coming in here and with 300 boats because it's pretty
Well, or
outside.
even townspeople.
Right, or even, right.
Causing the,
If you wanted to have something at Tux Point.
Right.
Right.
So as part of the permitting process, when you guys come back to us with this well-thought-out set of recommendations, I'm trying to give you some specific things to go poke at, like how would we pay for the additional, whether it's environmental police, whatever, and get the people who want these permits, maybe it's not a cheap permit.
We already have some ideas that we've been tossing around that we'll put together, formalize. As far as MEP goes, they have no permit for these sorts of things. So they're not a permit issuing agency, therefore we probably say, help out if we can, but it's not ours. So that's just my quick thought on that. And they have been around recently. Yes, You they see have. them on jet skis, they're around.
Hey,
They've been
there's a
around
big
more.
opportunity for them to do safety checks. All these boats are gonna be over here.
Yeah, and at Winger Sheet, and at Greens, it's, weekend boating is definitely been on the increase. Oh, boy.
Votes are sold out.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, this is a pretty significant situation, and it's been kind of ticking along for a little bit, but I think we hit beyond the tipping point. So the next steps are we would like to get what the Coast Guard guidelines are. You two will come up with some permitting draft ideas. And in the meantime, what do we as a board want to be doing with this? Do we want to be looking into different other aspects? I've got some things I'm going to be working on, but.
I personally think the experts need to come to us with recommendations.
Excellent.
And we've given them a lot to think about, and.
Super.
And they us.
So I'd like to just take a quick second to thank for all of you to understand that I'm very thankful for the police department and their staff. I can tell you that the relationship that the harbor department, the help that the harbor department gets from the police department in this community is pretty exceptional. So, thank you, Chief. All right,
Thank you,
just
Chief.
want everyone
very much. Yep.
to hear and know.
Excellent, good.
All right.
Nice shout out.
All right, we'll be back.
Okay, so do you all just want to let us know when you
That would
would
be
like
great.
to come back?
Yeah, because it's kind of a hectic time.
So can I make a suggestion that it be, obviously after the season's
Thank you.
over, right? But before the end of the year.
Oh, well before the end of the year.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I
This
wouldn't want to
fall.
wait
He's
until.
good at times.
Right,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm big on timing, right? We warned you about
Perfect.
that, so.
And I appreciate that very much. So, yeah, this fall would be a great time for us to be able to dig down, dial in, and
Freshen everybody's
come up with
mind,
a plan.
yeah.
Thank you both very much, and I'm
Thank you.
very sorry that your staff and you were subjected to that.
Well,
That's just-
here's the good news, nobody got hurt.
That is the best way to.
That's the big thing, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Safe drive home.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you,
everybody.
gentlemen.
Have a good night.
Yep.
May I suggest that we skip liaison updates, I'm gonna send an email out, at this point,
Great success.
and then, say it again?
That's a great suggestion.
And now let's move on to consent agenda. Okay, we have, the warrant that has to be approved in a very specific way, I believe, is that right?
Well, there's two pieces. There's approval of the warrant for the state primary. And then there's a motion to be made and adopted to approve police details at the polling place.
Right.
And there's a recommended motion for you to make specific to that second issue.
Okay. Then may I have a motion to accept the warrant for state primary on September 6th, 2022?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, roll call vote, John Round,
Yes.
Ryan Solacey,
Yes.
Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
Ann Harrison.
Yes.
Becky Jake says yes, that was moved by Ann Harrison, seconded by Brian Solacey. The next motion is to approve a sufficient number of police officers, but not less than one, at the polling location at every election therein to preserve order and to protect the election officials and supervisors from any interference with their duties and to aid in enforcing the laws relating to elections as required by Section 2 of Mass General Law, Chapter 54, which was changed in Section 13 of Chapter 92 of the Acts of 2022. And further, to move to designate the police chief the authority to assign specific police officers according to scheduling and availability. The town clerk will advise the police chief on the location and time the officer or officers either are needed.
Moved as read.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Ann Harrison, seconded by John Round. May I have a roll call vote, please? Ann Harrison?
Yes.
Kathy Bellata?
Yes.
Brian Solacey?
Yes.
John Round?
Yes.
And Becky Jake says yes. Can we take D&E together, the acceptance of resignation, Kurt Svetaka, Bike Ped Committee, and the approval of the wetland survey of Chabaco Road? Okay, do those together?
Good.
Okay. Motion to approve those two items, please.
Motion to approve D&E.
Second, please.
Second.
Okay, moved by John Round, seconded Brian Solacey. Roll call vote, John Round.
Yes.
Brian Solacey.
Yes.
Kathy Bellata.
Yes.
Ann Harrison.
Yes.
Becky Jake says yes. And now we have the Boston Post-Cane, which John sent the information to us a while back. And I think that would be wonderful for the board to do. Any comments on that? So we've missed this year, unfortunately, but I still think we could still do it. We've missed the 4th of July.
We could make it a Labor Day event.
Yeah.
I like that.
Or sometime in September, and
Yeah.
that's one that has been done in the past, so
Okay,
that's a good enough window.
so let's talk about that September 1st, right? Labor Day, or Labor Day rather.
Yes, which is the 4th, I think.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve the transfer of the Boston Post-Cane from the Elder Brethren to the Select Board, Manchester Select Board?
I move that, yes, the transfer of the awarding of the cane.
Yes. Okay.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by John Round, seconded by Brian Solacey. Roll call vote. Ann Harrison?
I guess, how do we figure out who it goes to?
It's, okay. It's the oldest man or woman in town, whomever the oldest person
How do we
in
know?
town is.
We will have to figure out something mechanically here.
Right.
Certainly the cricket would help out, and that would probably wind up perhaps on Debbie's desk to,
Yeah, Nancy Hammond.
I was gonna say the
certainly
council.
council
Yeah.
on
with the
Aging.
Council on
Be
Aging.
able to-
We'll get the appropriate people involved. And
I would not like to be at an award ceremony where somebody stands up and says, hey, I'm older than that.
Well, then we just give a
Well,
number.
then we can have just a throwdown,
all right.
whoever wins gets it. It might be worth the price of admission.
Yeah.
I've been to a few of the Elder Brethren Awards when it was strictly an award there, and we didn't have any fisticuffs.
I'm glad to hear that. Okay, so we have a motion. It's
Okay,
been
yeah.
seconded.
Okay, and my point has been clarified, and somebody else will decide, and that's fine with me. Yes.
Okay, Kathy Bellata?
Yes.
Brian Solacey? John Round?
Yes.
And Becky Jake says yes as well. That'll be fun. Town administrators report.
Okay, just a few items. One, obviously you had your workshop on Saturday, a productive session. The focus was really on procedures, process, sort of your meeting protocols. I thought all of that was a good and productive discussion. Did not have time to go into sort of strategy priorities, which will continue at, that's your continuation of the workshop, which will be the 25th of August. Just wanted to give that quick update for the audience who's listening, and know that you're doing well to keep plugging away at that. So that's all good. I did just want to underscore the September meeting date and the question of conflicting with the primary. It's frowned upon. It's not an absolute no, but it is frowned upon to hold a public meeting while an election is taking place. So I didn't know if if there's an ability to look at a different date for that first meeting in September or not. We don't need to settle that right now, but looks like you're starting to look at your calendars. If you can take a quick look and we can nail it down, fine. Or we can do it at your next meeting.
Can we move it up a week?
What do you mean?
Earlier?
August has 5 Mondays.
We were gonna have a spillover meeting.
Do it on the 29th?
The 29th, and we weren't sure we would need it, maybe, to Brian's point, we could use it for this.
Can we do that?
It's an interesting,
I mean, I don't think we can go to Wednesday because it's probably or possibly a ZBA meeting. Hopefully it'll be done by August. You've got 40 days, so from where that falls in.
Thursday is a possibility if you want to do
Thursday of the 8th?
Yes.
That's fair.
Okay.
I definitely won't be here, but if everybody else that takes care of it and Ann can chair, I will not be able to.
Hang on, I'm on my calendar and lost track of them. What day are we
We're
talking?
looking at Thursday, September 8th.
29th, I'm not gonna be here anyways.
Thursday,
29th, I'll be traveling, so I mean, I could probably dial in from the airport.
We're in
No,
September.
I was
Oh,
thinking
yeah, I
about
see, if we
August.
tried yes, thank you.
You couldn't make your own suggestion.
I didn't think it through,
Okay.
okay? That's why I
Okay,
did
so-
this.
So in lieu
September-
of doing the 6th, it would be moved to September 8th, that Thursday.
Yes, I have nothing going on the 8th.
Would that work for everybody else?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, so it looks like that would be it, and Ann will chair that meeting.
Okay, and lastly, as I think most of you know, there was a lot of concern about some activity on a property in the corner of C Street and Spy Rock Hill. So the building inspector has been in contact with the owner. It does appear that the thresholds might have been reached that should require a special permit. So he is following up with that and will be issuing a letter of violation and requesting that they need to come in for a special permit for that work. So I think that process works. I know that a lot of people were concerned and wanting immediate action, but we have to be pretty methodical in our approach to situations like that and let the process play out.
So no work is continuing that.
There's no more work being done, correct. So that's where we are with that, and stay tuned as we go forward.
They did have an application back in,
They had an application for an A&R, which
they were on the
withdrew that.
agenda for the ZBA back in December and then withdrew.
Right, they withdrew all applications.
Okay, this is, can we it's your administrator's report, we can discuss those?
You're just sort of discussing the facts of what has transpired, so that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
We don't
Because
need to get-
yeah, I mean, that property has a long history.
So the short of it is, the building inspector is following up and following through on enforcement activities, and we'll bring it into compliance.
Okay,
Which is
and
the
we'll get
work
an
is-
update on that, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
but work is stopped, I'm sorry, on that, there's nothing going on.
It had already stopped.
Oh, it had, all right, so maybe at least this step.
They did what they wanted to do,
Mhm.
they buttoned it up.
Yeah.
But in doing what they wanted to do, they exceeded the thresholds that
All
they were
right.
told not to exceed.
And maybe the emails have died down, at least for now.
For now.
But much of what's gone on there in terms of on the property and trees, that's private property, that's,
Understood, yeah.
Right, we do not have regulations
As sad
about
as it is.
tree cutting on private land.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is true. That's true. So those are the 3 items I wanted to go over, so I'm good for now.
Wonderful. All right.
Good.
Motion to adjourn,
So moved.
second?
Second?
Okay, moved by Ann Harrison, seconded John Round, roll call vote, John Round,
Yes?
Brian Solomon, Kathy Bellata,
Yes.
Ann Harrison,
Yes.
Kathy Jake says yes. Thank you all for attending, good night.